have him. So yeah, so already TecTuesday's worked in a number of ways for us at Design.
Fantastic. So Mark, do you think we can kick off? I think we've got a substantial audience and more might still join, but shall we kick off?
Yep.
Cool. All right, so welcome to our second virtual Tech Tuesday Forum of 2020, an interesting year for all of us. We do have one more Tech Tuesday Forum for this year. It's on the 3rd of November, and we'll talk more about that later. So we hope that that will be an in-person one. But the title for today's forum is Above and Beyond, Creating a Truly Sustainable Manufacturing Ecosystem. And we will have Associate Professor Deb Polson, the head of the School of Design, introducing Gabby shortly. But a little bit of housekeeping before we kick off. If you do have any questions and comments to make, please use the chat box. Yeah, Mark Batley is going to manage the Q&A session later on. You're welcome to unmute yourselves if you want to ask a question during the Q&A session. Alternatively, I can unmute you at my end. And we will endeavour to get to as many questions as we can. So before I hand over to Deb to introduce Gabby, just a reminder that as part of the Innovative Manufacturing and Materials Program initiative, we do have the MADE 2020. It's Manufacturing, Design and Entrepreneurship. We've got the 2020 physical conference rescheduled to Monday the 7th and Tuesday the 8th of December with the gala dinner on the Monday evening. And just as we did last year, we will be hosting that event at Cordis, Auckland. So the overarching theme for this year's event is Synergies in New Zealand Manufacturing, Design and Entrepreneurship. And I would like to highlight that our submissions for presentations at this event closed this Friday. So we did have a good set of submissions earlier in the year before COVID forced us to reschedule our dates. But all authors who submitted earlier in the year, they have received correspondence from us. And we have requested that all authors submit as an indication that they are still wanting to be a part of the event. But we really do encourage fresh submissions from industry stakeholders, from postgrad students and from other researchers. So you can head to our madenz.org website for all the information you need on that event. So without further ado, Deb, if you'd like to share your screen, and I'll hand over you to introduce the lovely Dr. Gabriela Baron. You're muted. Hang on, you need to unmute yourself there. There we go.
Yeah, you'll need to stop sharing your screen. So
okie dokie. Stop share. There we go.
Thank you, Claire. I'm just gonna, if you can let me know if you see a colourful PowerPoint in front of you or not.
Yep, we see it.
Excellent. Just try and, oh gosh. Just try and click the button that's been covered by all the Zoom stuff. There we go. Okay, so which can you see? Can you see the presentation screen or mine?
Presentation screen.
No, we are seeing with the speaker notes and everything.
Okay, there you go. Thank you, Gabby. Yeah. So I'm just going to give a bit of context to Gabby, why she's here, and a little bit of introduction to the design school, which some of you might have seen before in a presentation we've given here at TecTuesday. But as some of you might know, the design school only kicked off this year. So we have our very first cohort, and we've been successful in some research grants, and we've only really, and we've got quite a lot of fantastic staff and academics and technicians that have joined us as well. But our very first recruits were Carla Amaral and Gabby Baron, who you're going to meet tonight. So I'm just going to quickly, again, remind people that we aren't a design thinking school, we're a design school. We are very much in the process and practice of designing solutions, and understanding how they impact the world. So we're very intentional in how we design, interventional, and we hope to be transformative. And we have got a particular process that we go through, even though it's a generalist design degree, which is more about preparing people for design leadership roles that are more strategic, like UX, design strategist, interaction design, and roles like that. It's not necessarily ones that are tied to production, traditional production. But I just wanted to give you a quick glance, because we would love from this group, you can see that we have a bachelor's degree, we now have a master's degree and a number of PhD students. But at the moment you see that we've created our design school around 4 key themes of design electives, which is the global challenges, all about the SDGs, around sustainability. How do we prepare our designers to understand impact a bit better and understand the various contexts they'll work in? We're looking at emerging tech. We're just always excited by emerging tech. So you can see there a bunch of things there. We're also looking at design and business to understand strategic planning. But what I'm interested in from this group, we're also looking at design and local community practices. And one of these is local manufacturing. So we're really looking to, for next year, when we start to present these kinds of contents as part of the learnings, is to understand the manufacturing context a little bit more in New Zealand, as we are all newbies here. We have got fabrication labs, we've got digital prototyping labs, and we've also got these sort of hybrid research labs that we've also got as part of the design school. But to get to Gabby, the way that we're kind of recruiting both staff and students is by not necessarily looking only at people's research background, the papers they've published, their PhDs, but we're really interested in their whole profile. And the way we look at a design profile these days is really about what is their actual practice, their methods and the technologies they use, and the context in which they work in. And what we're really interested in is about personal attributes. What does the designer bring? And when we talk about attributes, we talk about whether you're collaborative, independent, radical, analytical, entrepreneurial. And I already know that Gabby is radical, but she also has a lot of other attributes that I'll speak to a bit more in a minute. We also look for what people care about. And Gabby is someone who cares about conservation. She cares about life underwater mostly and life on land, but she has a really strong personal passion and commitment to that kind of context of design. We also want to know from people in their profile what tools and technologies excite them. So are they interested in AR, AI, and how these things might impact their practice, and who you collaborate with. And Gabby collaborates a lot with engineering. She actually did her PhD in engineering. And she may or may not tell you about that experience, because Gabby only finished her PhD last year, just before she started with us, and it might be a bit too close to finishing for her to talk about in a positive way. So we got the profile that we look for in designers, but we also look for their folio. So how does their folio, which is a collection of thoughtful, precise, impactful, joyful projects and experiments, demonstrate their profile? So this is how we're developing our design students, but it's also how we recruit our staff. And Gabby was our first recruit, and I was just completely excited to see her application come through when it did. Gabby arrived and only started at the university in January with her family, and here's the gorgeous Sophia with her here. With her family in January, so she just beat the COVID blues. Luckily, we have her here. So Gabby is an early researcher, and she's taking care of a lot of the research and teaching at the School of Design around areas of design and conservation, and brings to us incredibly precise methods and tools because of her engineering. I'm assuming because of her engineering background. But the interesting thing about Gabby is she has this radical care, and this kind of pushes us all. And every time we go to print something at the photocopier in design, we always look over our shoulder to see if Gabby's there, because she's very much brings to us a real sense of commitment, and expects a lot from all of us and our students. But Gabby's not only radical, and she's not only focused on sustainable practices, and she's got a real keen eye on how things are manufactured, the life cycle of any kind of new product. But also Gabby does not shy away though from viability. So Gabby's not someone who looks at conservation without the understanding the feasibility and the viability that still is required, and profitability. So Gabby doesn't shy away from profitability in her research either. So and that's really just me introducing why I think Gabby is incredibly of value to us in the university. She's also incredibly collaborative and can work across all kinds of disciplines, but her absolute superpowers is how she can customize a precise forensic methodology for any new context or purpose in order for you to come up with a new service, a new product, a new system. She's a great systems thinker. So today she's going to talk to you a little bit, I'm hoping, about some of the work she's done to date and what she hopes to do. And so without further ado, I'm going to allow Gabby to take on the rest of this for now. So good luck, Gabby.
Well, thanks a lot, Deb. That was very, very generous. And I hope that I can fulfill the huge expectations.
You already have.
So, but also to the listeners here today. So I start, Claire? Yeah? Go? Okay. So I'm going to be talking today about how to create a truly sustainable manufacturing ecosystem. And that word truly is very, very tricky, but it's also catchy. So welcome here to this Tech Tuesday without the pizza and the drinks. I'm so sorry about that. I hope to make it fun for you anyways, and I hope that you can grab a drink and just enjoy this talk. So we're going to talk about design for purpose, and how to design for purpose, and then how to go above and beyond what we think is sustainable, and then how to align with the rules that govern natural systems. So what is design for purpose? Well, you know, there's a thing, design has gone through many phases, and as you heard, I'm a designer, and I'm a product designer, but I'm also an environmental, I have a PhD in environmental engineering. So when you talk about sustainable design, that's not the same thing as talking about design for sustainability, because that for there indicates purpose. In general, sustainable design is like, or sustainable business, it's like, okay, so I have a business, I'm doing this, how can I be less bad for the environment? And I know that I'm using words that are really biased there, but I mean, it's okay. While if I do design for sustainability, it's actually good for the environment. So it's a design that has a purpose, and that purpose is to regenerate the environment and the social cohesion of a place. So here, when I talk about sustainability, I'm not going to separate environmental sustainability from social sustainability, because these are very, very much connected. But I'm also going to talk about, you know, what Deb mentioned, the for-profit thing here. So I'm also not going to talk about NGOs or philanthropy. So I'm going to talk about business. The other thing is that here, when I say social, I will also imply cultural aspects. And as you may have known, you know, these are the three pillars or the three main dimensions of sustainability. And there's a lot of companies that they call them triple impact companies, or B companies is what they're called in Argentina. So I'm going to try to make a summary and try to put together everything we know about design and sustainability in one graph. So, and try to keep it simple. So let's see how that goes. So when we think about product manufacturing, we can start with the Industrial Revolution, right? So that's when kind of design also appeared, because it was about how to make products adapted to industrial production. Before that, we can say that products were more like artisan, produced artisanally. Sorry, I can't see my own screen. So we have two lines here. We have time and we have complexity. And we have this green line. And this green line is supposed to represent like the evolution of sustainability in this framework. So we can say in a very, very simple way, let's say, or a very summarizing way, that in the beginning, the design was oriented towards the making of objects or artifacts or, single elements, right? Then we are right now in a phase of human-centered design, which if you think about a product that is human-centered, you can think of a smartphone. And I think that we're going, or what I try to teach or what I try to aim to is something called purpose-driven design, which is, more complex. And how do we decide if it's complex or not? Well, there's one thing that in the past, usually the decisions around the project phase of a product was made by one discipline, or maybe one company, we could say. So this was more simple. Right now, because we're targeting problems that are harder to tackle, we are combining many, many disciplines in one design. So this is something that has added complexity to our projects or to our offer. The other axis that we can put here is, from a single product to a product service system. So while in the past we might have designed, I don't know, like a computer, what can I say? A marker. So we could have designed a marker that is a single product. Right now we design systems of products and services. And there, another good example is a smartphone, because you have the product, the actual phone, but then the phone only works if it's attached to a bunch of services. So for example, internet and different apps that come from third parties, etc. So that's how you provide the value. So in general, I may dare say that when you start adding disciplines together, so you start doing interdisciplinary design, you have higher potential of social sustainability. While when you design systems instead of products, you have more potential for environmental sustainability. So here, now that we have all these axes, we can say, okay, so there's different things that are happening right now. So we have human-centered design, which is, it's collaborative, or it's interdisciplinary, and it's systemic. We have social innovation that doesn't really relate to a single element or a system of products and services. It can stand in between. And then we have things like circular design, which is based on a product's life cycle. So it's very systemic, and it's not necessarily involving many, many disciplines in the conception phase. Anyways, these could be moved a little bit in this graph, and it's arguable. But these are kind of the disciplines that are growing right now. So design for purpose, or let's say business for purpose, has an aim. And the aim is to regenerate ecosystems and to regenerate the social cultural fabric. Design for purpose, I said it, is as opposed to, start a business to sell something. So this is product based. This is aim based. So how do we fulfill this aim? Well, we can provide technical solutions, which are like tangible material solutions, or we can try to work in the level of meanings, which goes, which has the purpose of changing the mindsets, which are the basis of change. So how do we go above and beyond material sustainability? So how can we innovate for purpose? Well, in general, there's two approaches. I have to say that this here is not a timeline necessarily, it's a spectrum. So these two things are just different points of the same thing, of the same spectrum. They're not opposed. And there's definitely a lot of intersection between them. So if we focus on the present, we say, okay, designers solve an existing problem, usually through technical solutions. You know, that's in general, product design is here as well. But if we think of a desired future, that's a completely different approach. And we try to say, okay, what does an ideal situation look like? What is the future that we desire? And we say, so instead of thinking from the problem, we are thinking from the solution, right? So sometimes here, this allows for bigger innovation, let's say, because you can think better outside the box and not having your head, you know, not think with the same mindset that actually created the problem. And then we have a lot of shades of in-betweens, you know, and we usually call them transition paths, because what we see is a desired future, and then we establish, okay, so how do we get there? And there's a lot of different stages of a transition. I'm going to give specific examples in a little while. So how can we have better impact? So if we are working, you know, in these two levels, there's also combinations between these two levels. And I've tried to create this other graph that kind of summarizes here in a big block, like a project phase, what I call project phase. It's probably not the best name, but since you have an idea, you design, you do the project, you manufacture, you distribute, it arrives to detail. So then there's the use phase. And here it's a post-consumption phase. And this could look like an actual life cycle of a product, right? So how can we have better impact? Well, the first thing that actually happened in time when we realized that we were in an environmental mess is that we said, okay, we can clean it up. So, you know, it's like an end of pipe solution here. And we say, okay, so, you know, the river is polluted. I'll go and just clean it up. I'll filter these waters. I'll pick up the garbage. I'll clean up the Pacific garbage patch. And there's a lot of initiatives that are working, you know, in this stage. You can say, okay, so, you know, I'm making these products and I'm inserting them in a system where they can be recycled. Or, you know, you fly and then you offset your carbon emissions. So it's like you do you make it dirty and then you try to compensate for that and clean it up. Or you can say, you know, there's another thing could be like, so I'm having an impact, so I'm trying to create a positive impact to balance it. And although this example operates in a lot of different levels, and that's another thing that I want to say is that all these examples, I'm just taking a little bit, a small characteristic of each company. So that doesn't mean that the company doesn't do more things, right? So maybe this company says, you know, if you buy one lunch from them, they give one lunch. So buy one, give one. So they try to compensate for their impact in the world. How can we go a little bit backwards? And we say, okay, so during the use stage, we're going to try to create less consumption. So that's done in a different levels. In general, you can say, okay, so I'm selling these products. I'm going to make them efficient in terms of energy consumption or water consumption. I'm going to make them, you know, to sell them in a way that they need less cleaning products, less maintenance, etc. So if you're thinking in a life cycle perspective, you know, when you buy a product, you're also consuming all these things during the use stage. But also what I want to say is this enable responsible consumption. So you can go also superficially or deeper. So let's think, you know, this is a washing machine. And, you know, you can, as a consumer, you can decide which one to buy. And you're not only like saving resources, but also saving money, I guess, if it consumes less. Then there's products like these that say, okay, so I'm selling this product. This is a product, it's made out of plastic, everything, but it's run on human energy. This is like a flashlight with a dynamo. So you create the energy to light the flashlight. So it's running on renewable energy, let's say. But in a deeper level, it's about educating the user on consumption, on like good consumption habits. So maybe if you say, you know, all these type of feedback that you can have, this is an app that shows you the screen time, is very, very useful, because maybe you're like, oh, I need to spend less time in my phone, or maybe you have some personal goals. And there you can kind of reflect on your own use. So there are some products that are actually also educating consumers on how to consume less during the use stages. In general, also here we have like product transparency. So this is like the transparency of the product. But let's go backwards a little bit more. So if you're selling a product, what can you do to have a better impact? Well, there's greener manufacturing. And here's what I said, sustainable design, let's say. So here you're doing the product anyways. It might not necessarily be for purpose, your company, but you try to make the least impact possible. So if you think of a single product, you will select materials, less materials and less energy to make the product. This means also in less materials, you'll think of non-toxic materials, you know, materials that are not so bad for the earth. Maybe that they are compostable, that they're more coherent with natural systems. And if you're thinking in a life cycle, which integrates this product, you're going to think about less material and less energy in the whole life cycle. So less packaging, less transport, etc. Does that make sense? Yeah, okay, good. So if you work at the product level, you know, this water bottle is still a water bottle. It's the same. Consumption habits don't change at all. So you're still, as a user, you're still consuming water in this type of way, but some engineer or designer said, okay, so let's do the eco shape. So it uses 30% less plastic, or maybe I'm using, you know, post-consumer recycled plastic. Maybe I can crush it for recycling, so it uses less space in a truck. The label is smaller, maybe it has some eco, I don't know, bio-compatible inks, etc. So this is like a really timid innovation that doesn't really change anything. So it's like the redesign of existing products into greener ones. Then if you go a bit deeper, you say, okay, so I'll design new greener products. And here we're a bit in the realm of a product service system. So we design a cup that has the size that fits in a coffee machine, in a barista coffee machine. So it's becoming accepted. This requires a change in behavior, not only from the consumer, but from the whole system, to be able that coffee shops can be able to pour coffees to go in these kind of cups. So here we're seeing that this has the impact of this is a lot deeper, and it's already working in a systems level, not in a product level. If you think of a life cycle level, we say, okay, maybe if you want to reduce fuel consumption in transportation, you know, I found this. I actually bought, I don't know if it's this brand, but I bought a mattress in a box for me, and I could carry it in my car. And that meant that I didn't have to pay for a truck to bring me the huge king size mattress that I bought. And it's actually pretty good quality. So when I'm designing this mattress that can be completely collapsed and fit in a tiny box, I'm just making sure that one truck could load 40 of these instead of 10 of these. So you're reducing, you know, fuel consumption there. And this is like external to the product itself. It's more related to the life cycle of the product. Then another example could be this one. You know, you extend the lifespan of a product through the reuse. And here we see a design intention. The actual brand is called Hand Me Down. So it's, you know, it's selling these very classic looking jackets that are intended to be passed on from generation to generation. And here we see that first, the quality has to be really good. And that, I mean, these are very expensive jackets as well, but they are really high quality. And then that's the other thing that I want you to consider, that the aesthetic obsolescence is considered. So they're not using they're not following a particular momentary fashion. They're quite classic. Another example could be, this modular smartphone. I don't know if this is an actual product. I know that it was kickstarted a long time ago, but this was aiming to target technical obsolescence. So maybe you have a smartphone, but now better cameras have appeared. So you can just, instead of dumping the whole smartphone, you can change only the camera or only the battery. Like, how many of us do change, just, throw away a smartphone because the battery is dying? And also there's this little cat, or, this piece of wood, I think are also related to some aesthetic trends. So maybe you have a smartphone and you're a teenager, or you're I don't know, and you really like a band, and then you grow up a little bit and you hate the band. So you should be able to kind of change this little image that you have here, because that's also another reason why we change from one product to the other. The other thing that I want to highlight about this example is that you see the design intention here. So in order to update your phone, you don't need to go to a Apple store, right? You can do it yourself because it's so self-explanatory. Like, it's so easy to change it. It looks like a bunch of Legos. It's modular. So that's another design intention there. Oh, and this I thought was a very cute example. So, this is the packaging of a TV from Samsung. I think it's Samsung. And you can, the packaging comes with the pre-shapes where you can cut it up and reuse the packaging. So you're extending the use of the packaging box. So that's greener manufacturing. And what if you have a service? What if you're providing a service? You're not really selling a product, or you are here in between. So you offer a product service system. So a system of products and services that together fulfill a need. So what you can think in order to be, to have better impact, is to rethink the notion of access versus ownership. So instead of owning a product, you access the product, or you access the benefit that the product is giving you. And this is in general the shift to shared schemes. There's a word here called servicization. It's a very new word. So it's like turning, products into services based on the satisfaction that they're giving you. So you only pay for the satisfaction. You don't pay for the product itself, and you're never the owner of the product. This allows way more innovation. And why is that? Because let's think of the water bottle example. So you can drink, if the need is to drink water when you're not at home, here in New Zealand, that you have, that the tap water is healthy to drink. So maybe you can use a water bottle. You can buy a water bottle. You can refill a water bottle, or you can actually access water through a drinking fountain. So let's imagine in university campus. So that's a service. The university provides drinking fountains for students. So the satisfaction is the same. You're drinking water, but you have separated from the idea of the product to drink water. And what does that look like? Well, this is an example. I'm not going to go deeper into the Uber scheme, but they made a really good business out of Uber, and you have access. You have access to mobility. You can use shared mobility. You can have different levels of quality of cars, of luxury or something, and it's very, very easy to access it, and it's very, very convenient. But the thing about Uber is that because it's super optimal in the way that it works, in the algorithms that it uses to call the cabs near you, is that they travel the least distance possible. So they call the cabs that are closest to the clients. You wait less time. So it's really sustainable compared to the alternative of riding a car to get somewhere. The same scheme of from ownership to access happens in co-working spaces. So you have a beautiful office, you have meeting rooms, you have printers, coffee makers, etc. But you don't own it. You just have access to it. And that's by being shared, it's a lot more sustainable. It consumes less space. It's more optimal in the use of the same resources. So instead of all these people owning one single coffee machine, there's one that is shared for everyone. And the same with internet and with electricity, you know, light, everything. So it's a lot more efficient in the use of resources. And one other thing that I want to highlight here is that socially, it's creating a bunch of interactions of facilitating collaboration in a way that it was not possible before. So here's the water fountain example. And then going to the deeper level of sustainability, what you can facilitate are connections. So instead of selling products or services, you're offering like a service or a product service system, but the main thing that you're giving is the connectedness, let's say. So this is more immaterial. It does consume a lot of energy though. So we have to acknowledge that digital platforms consume a lot of energy. In general, they have the shape of social platforms or events. And the aim is to empower, connect, enable, visibilize existing resources. So it's making resource use a lot more efficient. This is, for example, Neighborly. And we see that Neighborly, it's different from other social apps because it really, it's more transparent. You are who you really are, so it's verified. And it works in a local level. So it works in a pretty deep, in a pretty real level. Sorry. I don't know if you're familiar with Neighborly, but if you see, it's creating this connection and this trust because it's people from the same neighborhood in order to extend the life cycle of the couch, right? So it's less trash around. And you can do this not only with platforms, you can also do it with events. So an event like this one, TecTuesday, it's facilitating these connections. So this is another event from New Zealand, Morning Rave. And actually I have a friend that loves it, which is, you know, people that wake up really early and they go and they exercise and then they dance. And what happens is that not only the people are connected to the place and to the, you know, it regenerates the social cohesion, but it also, then these people come out of here and they go to their workplaces with a smile. And that's something really, really valuable as well. So, wow, we went through this whole, let's say, this whole diagram that tries to summarize all these things from a new perspective. And one thing that we can think of is this little arrow down here that says, okay, so if the deeper that we go, so the earliest that we go, earliest and deeper in a project, there is more potential for sustainability in every sense. So in general, the deeper we go, there's more systems thinking, there's interdisciplinarity, and there's collaboration, but not necessarily. This could happen across all these sectors. And also I want to show that, you know, as nature, these sectors are not separated, okay? There's a lot of intersections and in-betweens, any one of these. So here I try to place, you know, some of these examples in this matrix that it's already full of things. But as we can see, this is a very timid approach, while this is a very radical approach, because the truth is that we don't really need more products. We only need very few more products. So unless you're working on those very few that are completely different and are providing a completely different value, and you are the people that know that, the experts on that. What we need is some things that enable a more efficient use of all the resources that we already have out there. So now let's try to go a bit deeper here. So I just wanted you to go with some tips of what I've learned. You know, I've been working in this field for for a bunch of years now. So, and what I can say is try to align with the rules that govern natural systems. And what does that mean? That means very radical change. So there's this thing called biomimicry, and everybody's very excited about it. And I just want to say that biomimicry is not necessarily sustainable. Not necessarily. Many times it is, but it's not necessarily. And I just heard a great example. So maybe you're mimicking the flight of a prey bird to make a warplane. So that's the purpose. That's where purpose comes. So are you making a plane that's going to kill people using biomimicry? You know, that's not really sustainable. So, but many times you can use biomimicry to do sustainable things. And here there's a Leonardo da Vinci product, let's say, machine. And again, at the other side of the spectrum, I think, of the same spectrum, is a global observation so that you can align with the rules that govern natural systems. So this is like systems thinking or circular design. Here we have a diagram on a life cycle of a product. So that's the thing. You can inspire natural organisms and innovate in a product level, or you can inspire in the rules that govern these systems. So the closer that we are to that, if the closer that our approach is to nature, the more green it would be, like really green. So, and then there's of course all shades of in-betweens again. So what are these rules? I'm just going to present a couple of them because we don't have much time. So one of them is error friendliness. Be tolerant towards mistakes. Use them to explore new opportunities. In every living system, there's a characteristic that they learn from errors. So errors actually happen. That's real. And we can act accordingly. So you have to plan for solutions that admit these errors, or not, or if not, you can, it could lead to catastrophic events. One example is nuclear energy, right? So we're planning a way of producing energy that relies on what the future generations will do with the waste. And we don't have that power. We can't control what's going to happen in the future. Nature is very uncertain. Natural systems are really uncertain for us. There's so much uncertainty still. We think we know about everything and we don't know. We really don't. So you have to acknowledge that you're not optimal. That's another example of not planning for errors. So here's a picture of the Titanic. Another rule is adaptability. So that's one of the things, like sustainability relates to kind of maintain our situation in perpetuity. We already know that we cannot maintain the way we live. We cannot maintain it. We have to change it. So now, that trend of sustainability is moving towards resiliency. What happened with COVID? So what we need is to find good strategies to adapt, and that's resiliency. And a really good tip for understanding which systems adapt the best is that systems that are what this author has called suboptimal. So as an example, I'm going to show you this. This is a public space gym. And it's very optimal because it's based on human factors and ergonomics. And so it's really, really good for some very specific people with a very specific size to work out in. And it gives these very specific instructions. And it also follows these very specific working out trends, while places like this can adapt a lot easier. So a person in a wheelchair can come and actually do some exercises here. A kid can play. Different races and different types of people can find a use, and different styles of training could probably make use of this space, right? So, and if you see it, by making it more adaptable, it's more simple, it's modular. So it has like these pipes and these columns, and this is way cheaper to make than this one, and way cheaper to, I guess, disassemble and recycle. The other thing that relates to that one is the thinking of unfinishedness and modularity. So in general, if you look for modular, decentralized, and diverse, this allows you to be more error-friendly because you can change the configuration depending on the context. So, you know, these are the eternal toys. They're not only really high quality, these Legos, but you can turn them into any toy that you want. So you provide the tools. It also has some social aspects to it because it allows for people to express their creativity. But it also works like this. So imagine that if I have these elements in my wardrobe and I move houses and my new space is smaller, I can just use this part of the module. So I'm extending the life cycle. Not only the fact that I can disassemble it and take it in my car, right? And that's also the approach of IKEA as well. So it's like they sell an unfinished product. They sell a product that you're supposed to assemble in your house, and there they lower the costs. But they also have a lot of sustainability issues attached. The products are very, very simple. They are less complex. And I can assure you that IKEA uses a lot of design to be able to find this low complexity. So I'm going to find finish really, really quick. Also, nature is systemic and cyclic. So try to think of how can you align to systems and cycles. If we think about it, you know, this is a very good example. So there's a cycle for the tree to grow and to cut it. If we think of the pandemic, we kind of shut down and slowed down, and that allowed for the environment to regenerate. So maybe, I mean, there's a cycle in the week. We work and then we rest. And nature has these cycles. So the more aligned to these cycles that you are, the most green your solutions would be. And the last one is this: distributed, diverse, and resilient. And this has become really evident now with pandemic situation. So in general, think global, but act local. And follow a small, local, open, and connected approach. There's a lot of bibliography about this. And in general, this will give you a lot more resilience. So I'm finishing with this phrase that I've already mentioned, and it's about innovation. We really need radical innovation right now if we want to be realistic and actually do things, the level of green that we need to do them. So thank you.
Thank you, Gabriela. I'm sure there's a lot for all of us to think about there. So we've got a few questions coming through, and I know there's some others hiding people. I mean, Alan Good has one here in terms of. Well, Alan, you can feel free to
okay.
Unmute.
I can reply first.
You can read the question. Yep.
Okay. So if everyone has read the question, let me just think of it. Okay, I know that risk is a very, very important issue here. And I know that many times change happens when we are really, like, it's really hard to be ahead of taking this risk ahead of time. In general, we are more willing to do radical changes when we are deeply affected by the conditions of the context. So for example, now that that with the pandemic, the university is willing to move faster to change. And that's okay, I guess. So many companies that can afford it start planning for these changes. So for example, you have car manufacturers that are already selling in Europe shared car sharing schemes. So like Toyota or classic car manufacturers, they stop selling cars and they're selling access to cars. So, and I really try to choose some some real examples here of companies that are for profit. So it's not NGOs that are doing this. I am not aware that Greenpeace, who founded FSC, has now pulled out. No, I'm not aware of that. I just put it as an example. And the other thing is that I know that this presentation reflects my view, and I try to find, you know, some examples for everyone to understand what I mean, but I might be mistaken in the sense that I'm just showing just a little part of what that company is doing. Olaf.
Thank you. Olaf's got a, oh, unless anybody would like to follow up on that question while we're there.
Yes. Okay.
Otherwise, happy to move on to Olaf's question, which is partly around distinguishing between the various flavors of design.
Yeah, I think that what you say, purpose-driven design, seems to be more a philosophy. Yes, and it's actually working very deeply in three. Look, I have a graph on this. So, so in general, when you try to shift to sustainable practices, you work first on mental models, then relationships, and then the practices. Or at least you have to try to work in a cross section here, because there's no way that practices will become actually sustainable if they're not adopted by the people. So what I'm trying to do is to explain that you have to go through all this spectrum. And I'm sorry, and it's hard. It's really hard to work on that, but that's what it's needed. This is not an easy solution. It's doable. A lot of companies are trying to do it. And I think that's where we're moving towards in the future. And the truth is that with this pandemic also, we're becoming more place-based. So there's going to be a lot of local manufacturing, I think, of items that were previously imported. I think that's what's going to happen in the future. And that's it. And Olaf, the other thing is that the way that we are trying to teach design is intentional, to teach principles that guide all its design strategy. So the technical aspects, whether you do it through products, through services, through graphic design, through interface design, it doesn't matter. Like, those are just the tools, but the strategy is what's important, and the methods, I guess.
So I cheated a little and put up one of my questions, but actually you pointed out, you know, the importance of being adaptable. This is a trade-off there between doing that at a product level and at a, you know, at the evolution of a product. If you take a phone or a car or many of those, they've adapted a lot, but only by replacing them along the way, which has its own downsides.
Well, I guess I think that the main question here is not about how you'll make sure that you'll keep selling your product over time in terms of adapting to market changes or to context changes. But the fact that if you can come up with a product that it's simple enough, you can sell that product all the time, because the demand of that product won't change with the context changes. So for example, like Lego, or honestly, like building materials. So the configuration of the house can change over time, but the materials are still the same. And there's always a demand for that. So maybe the challenge is to think, okay, what could my company offer based on the field that I'm proficient in, that it's, you know, maybe an alternative, and just test if it works, like a basic product.
Do we have, thank you, Gabriela. Do we have any other questions from anybody? Questions, comments, observations?
Okay.
Mark, I've got a quick question. Could I just jump in?
Yeah.
Rather than typing in. I was interested on your continuum. You had reusing waste or cleaning up the waste on one end of the spectrum, and then you had effectively stopping using product on the other end of the spectrum, right? Mm-hmm. Then you come and talk about sort of systems thinking and sustainability, and surely one of the kind of consistent things that you see in sustainable systems is the reuse of waste. So you don't try and stop things making waste in the environment. You try and find things to reuse that waste or make that waste into their food, right? So how does that fit into a sustainable system? Surely if we're stopping the consumption, what we're doing is just playing a different game that comes to an end, right? If we were playing a proper game of reusing things, you know, making our waste the source of the input to another process, and if that was the principle of our sustainable manufacturing system, if the government supported that, we might have a different outcome, right? So
Yeah,
why
well,
did you put...
well, what I'm suggesting, I know that maybe this is not specifically for manufacturing, because what I wanted to show you is that sustainability runs into many, many different levels. So what I suggest is that you see where your company is positioned and what you can actually do, and try to work on the level that you can do. So if you're selling products, the least you can do is try to make your product green, or you can make the life cycle of that product green. Of course, that if you can work on the social innovation side, you know, there's a lot of companies that have a bunch of initiatives in all the different ranges, and you don't need to be Patagonia to do that. You can do it, actually, the smaller you are, the most opportunity for change that you have, I guess, the more innovation that you can do, because it's that immaterial, the social innovation part, that it's the cheapest to make in general. So when you do have a product, because you know you are living out of that, and so many families are working there, and it's a product that it's needed, and you're using materials that come from outside a different cycle that are considered trash, you're definitely using a circular scheme that it's way greener than just a linear scheme. So I guess that you can try to act in all the levels, and one of them is trash, and make sure that whatever your trash is compostable, it's biocompatible, it's not harmful, like it's the least harmful to the environment as possible, etc. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah.
Okay, well, perhaps we can take one more question if there is one, and we're conscious of time. And
Russell.
If not, that's great. So thank you.
There's Russell.
Wait, one more. Yeah.
I missed it. Yeah, go for it. Sorry.
Hey, Gabby. Thanks for the presentation. I just wanted to ask, like, you hear stories about like countries who have like pivoted, like primary industries or kind of their specialty to sort of adapt to new challenges and stuff. Like, and I'm just wondering, is there any country case studies where a country has sort of adopted like these kind of frameworks or processes for kind of like a large part of their industry? Like we can see a difference? Yeah,
one of the things that I'm going to say in a TecTuesday is that, you know, the general conversation into not following the main Western paradigm, you know, economic paradigm, which, you know, will crumble if we change radically our economic systems, is that the solutions to these problems, to the environmental problems, are not technical, are tiny bit technical. What we have to change is of political and social nature. So the countries that are becoming or that have shifted to greener, let's say, to radically green, are countries that are in a really profound crisis. So for example, I did study in Italy, and you would see how Italians were going back to older technologies. So, you know, you see a bunch of community gardens. You see well, whatever, with the pandemic, you see these people singing in the balconies. So that's a very, let's say, it's first world facing a crisis. There's a big economic crisis in Europe, or there was, especially that hit Italy, Greece, Spain. And there you see deep innovations, but are all in the social level.
Interesting. Thanks.
Yeah. Or then you have countries like New Zealand or Denmark. I guess New Zealand is so much greener than other countries, and definitely more than Argentina and the US. But then, you know, you have Denmark and Finland, and these are countries that I think they have not faced crisis, but they're more attached to traditions. So they did not adopt technologies lightly. They use them, but they're not going to be saved by technology. They're just, they try to consume responsibly.
Cool.
Okay, so thank you very much, both Gabriela and the people who asked questions. Just again, conscious of time, the last thing we wanted to go through here was just to have a brief introduction to our speaker for the next Tech Tuesday. So this will be on the 3rd of November, who's a colleague of mine, Associate Professor Johan Verbeek, who leads the Plastics Centre of Excellence here at the University of Auckland. So Johan will be talking to us in November. Johan, do you want to give us a brief overview of what you'll be talking about?
Sure, I can do that. My plan for the 3rd of November is actually to tie in a bit with what Gabriela has been saying about, and some of the other comments about circular design. So more specifically about product development in the context of industrial symbiosis. In other words, how do we develop products from the co-products from other industries and also from waste resources? And over my career, I've had the fortunate situation that we've actually have a few case studies dealing from building materials and polyesters from sustainable solutions, and also a few products out of the meat industry. And I want to tie that into the idea of a circular economy, and hopefully also a bit more focus on plastics and their role in the circular economy, how we deal with that in a product design environment. Yeah, that's the short version.
And I guess probably the one thing to add to that is Johan has a research proposal sitting in the last few weeks with the government funding body, which is very much in the space. And one of the interesting things is, from my perspective, it covers that spectrum from both, the hard technical, if you like, the technical aspects of, clever chemistry and so on, through to both the design implications of it, the social implications of it, and and how that relates to the market.
Yeah. And in fact, Deb and Gabriela are part of that proposal, so we still have our fingers crossed.
So, as a fellow South African, lovely accent there, Johan, and I'll just say that pronunciation of your surname, if I'm not incorrect, is Johan Verbeek. I mean, you'd be able to say it better, but I know that the Kiwis struggle to pronounce it. But we do look forward.
I've said it that way in years.
We look forward to hosting your presentation and forum on the 3rd of November, round about the same time, 5:30, and hopefully it will be in the Newmarket Seminar Room.
We really
because we're stockpiling supplies for Tech Tuesday events nowadays.
So, and just thank you for everybody for turning up. It's great to see a good range of people here. It's a shame we can't kind of network in quite the same way as we do normally, but next time.
And thank you for the opportunity to speak here. I know that I'm not so much in this field, but this was great.
Thanks for joining us, Gabby, and thank you for that presentation. And if anybody wants to stay on and unmute and play their video, feel free to join those of us for a bit of a chinwag over a wine or a beer if you have such handy. But overall, from me and our innovative manufacturing and materials team, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, I have 2 small children, so I'm gonna go.
You better go and see them.
But
yep.
I will have all the drinks together at the next Tech Tuesday, the ones that I didn't have today on the next ones.
Excellent. Thanks, Gabby.
Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, down to a select few. I knew Nick would hang around. I mean, doesn't he?
Oh, good
Oh, so
evening, everyone.
Alan Greenberg just left
And
us.
Alan,